What's happening, everybody? Brent Axe here from syracuse.com, and we are live on the syracuse.com Syracuse Orange Basketball Facebook page. Admit it. Did you think we'd be talking about a win tonight? But that is what we are here to do, my friends. The Orange beat Louisville 78-73 on Big Monday on ESPN, and it was big in a lot of ways for Syracuse. Big in that the offense woke up. Big in that they got an NCAA tournament resume-building win. Big that they got a key ACC win on the road. And big in a lot of ways for the Orange, who lose on Saturday, of course, to Virginia, but come back tonight and beat Louisville in ACC play. Now the Orange get about a week off. They get some time to rest and recuperate and practice, and their next matchup will be Sunday at the Carrier Dome against Wake Forest. But what do you say we talk about this one first, kids? So do me a solid, hit that like button, hit that share button, let people know that we're here chatting with you live after the Orange beat Louisville 78-73. I kind of feel like it's a Frankenstein movie. It's alive! It's alive! Wow. You know, I just got to say, it was great to see a good basketball game after these last two games, Georgia Tech and the Virginia game after that, shooting 30% against Georgia Tech, their worst output of the season, shooting 33% against Virginia, scoring only 44 points in that game total, the lowest point total they've had at the Carrier Dome. Who knew? Who knew it would take going on the road and playing a Louisville team that's been pretty decent this year, not the Louisville teams of the past. They're going through transition. David Padgett is trying to keep that program afloat with all the impending sanctions and things going on at Louisville with Rick Pitino, as well as we are well aware and reading about in college basketball, but still not an easy go here for the Orange. But the offense comes alive big time for Syracuse, who shoots 47% tonight. And what's key about that is Louisville shot 46. Louisville started to come back in the second half. Louisville started to, send it inside to Mahmoud, send it into Spalding. Spalding, get your foot off the boat. Little Caddyshack joke there for you guys. And Syracuse couldn't stop it. But you know what? Tyus Battle and Frank Howard came alive tonight. Now, Tyus Battle and Frank Howard came into this game tonight. Frank Howard was 3 of 22 from three-point range in his last three games. The two combined were 16 of 68 in their last two games. Went 8 of 34, 10 of 34. Just they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat in the last couple games. Let's be honest here. The offense has just been stagnant. But in some post-game comments from Jim Boeheim, both on the radio and at his press conference, he said this is one of the best wins he's seen his team had in a long time. And Jim can, throw a little hyperbole in there sometimes, but certainly the effort was there on the offensive end, as we mentioned. Tyus Battle with 25 points. It's funny how Frank and Tyus are hand in hand. Their shooting numbers are always very similar and certainly have been in the last three games. Both players go 7 of 15 tonight. Frank Howard ends up with 22 points. Oshae Brissett fouled out with just over a minute to go, but he had 16 points at 3 from beyond the arc tonight. Pascal Chukwu comes alive after really struggling the past few games. Jim Boeheim kind of throwing up his hands in the last press conference saying, I don't know what's wrong with him right now. And Pascal Chukwu comes through tonight with the Orange. 5 points and 8 rebounds. And Syracuse needed that presence inside. He had a great tip-in off a Tyus Battle miss late in the game. Great dunk in the game as well. It's good to see that Pascal could do that, as we've talked about here and as we've seen. Syracuse can miss some dunks during the season. So Pascal with a big recovery tonight. Merrick Dolezaj just continues to contribute in big minutes. 38 minutes tonight, 8 points and 6 rebounds for the Orange tonight. Played much better defense. He's gaining confidence in that kind of paint area right around the free throw line, having more confidence to take that shot, being willing to take that shot. So all told, this was just a big-time recovery for the Orange. But here's the stat of the day, okay? Cue up that Dan Patrick music. Stat of the day, bop, bop. Points off turnovers. Syracuse had 20 points off 11 Louisville turnovers in this game. Syracuse turned the ball over 8 times, and Louisville got just 9 points off of that. Points off turnovers was huge for Syracuse to, get – this is what they do best in their defense. Transition points the other way. Points off turnovers, create opportunities. And Louisville, boy, 2 things about Louisville while it's on my mind, and I'm sure a lot of you noticed it tonight. One, nowhere near as intense on defense under David Pageant as they were under Rick Pitino. I think that team, it's interesting, and Greg Paulus is on that sideline, and there's still a lot of basketball to be played here, but that team had no energy tonight. Not only the team, that is the quietest I have ever heard the Yum Center. And I was texting some people that were at the game, and I was talking with a buddy of mine on Twitter, a gentleman by the name of Mark Ennis, who does a great job down there in Louisville. He works for the ESPN radio station down there. And he said it's really a combination of a couple of things. The fans that are staying away sort of out of protest because of everything that's happening there with Louisville, and they're kind of skeptical of where things going under David Pageant. They're just not sure. So what you don't get is a lot of enthusiasm. Now, picked up in the second half, no question. The crowd got into it, but that place was like a morgue for most of that game. And you know what? Syracuse took advantage of it. Syracuse took full advantage of it. And good for them for doing that, because they needed this win tonight. This is a resume-building win, as we mentioned, for the tournament. It's a resume-building win in getting an ACC road win. And it just goes to show you, look, this team looked dead and buried. This team looked like, look, you lose to Virginia at home the way that they did. You lose to Georgia Tech the way that they did. They can't score. They can't get the offense going. And we've talked about it here on these post-game shows and other places that it's not a matter of making adjustments and trying new things and doing this and doing that. They just couldn't hit shots. And when you can't hit shots, you can't do anything. Well, tonight the offense opened up. So now the question is, can Syracuse put a little consistency there? Can they maintain this? Because they're still down. They're still not very deep. Barama did not play tonight. We saw Braden Boyer get a little run out there. They actually ran a play for him at the end of the half. He traveled on that play, but he got a little run in this game. So all told, just what the doctor ordered for Syracuse, no question about it tonight. But, we brought it up that points off turnovers was huge. Syracuse was big in the paint in this game. Now, they lost the points in the paint department 34-30, but maintained there because Mahmoud and Spalding just got going at the end of the game and kind of bumped up that stat. But Syracuse led that stat for most of the game. And it was just a team that moved the ball a lot better tonight, took confident shots, it's funny when that little ball goes in the hole and, your confidence builds. And it started from the beginning, most particularly Frank Howard. We've seen this from Tyus Battle, okay? It was a surprise, frankly, to see Tyus Battle struggle as much as he has on the offensive end the past few games. Frank Howard, you just don't know. I mean, with Frank taketh and Frank giveth, right? Frank giveth, Frank tanketh away. It goes back and forth. He'll hit a big shot, that'll turn the ball over. There was a point in this game when Syracuse, I think it was 55-51, I believe, and they had all the momentum in the world, and Frank Howard's turning the ball over, and he's committing fouls. Frank Howard twice tonight fouled a three-point shooter. I mean, you can't do that, but, for every bad play he made tonight, he would make a good play. He'd make a good pass. He'd shoot a three. He'd get a transition basket. This was the good Frank Howard that Syracuse really needed. And it's really interesting how in concert they are. When Tyus is playing well, Frank's playing well, and vice versa. And O'Shea Brissett stepped up tonight, hitting those three-pointers. He was 3 of 5 from three-point range. And just what a difference it is when they can open things up just that much on the offensive end. And that they did against Louisville tonight. So big win for the Orange as they kind of can now take a breath and work on things for a week as they get ready to take on Wake Forest coming up on Sunday. What killed the Orange last year in their NCAA tournament resume was their lack of, not only signature wins, they didn't beat anybody on the road. All their big wins came at home, and the NCAA tournament committee, speaking of which, shout out to our boy Pat in Syracuse, one of our big sports radio callers. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with quadrants and how this thing is going to go this year. So the NCAA selection committee is changing the way that they look at things. They're adding new metrics in. They're looking a lot more at kind of modern analytics, Ken Pom ratings and things of that nature. And they're kind of separating your wins into quadrants. Quadrant 1 is, quality wins, big-time wins, resume-building wins. This qualifies, from everything I know, as a Quadrant 1 win for Syracuse, which they desperately needed. Their best win to this point, if you look at it from a metric standpoint, RPI and all that fun stuff, was Buffalo. So Syracuse certainly needed to build on that. So while it's on our brain here discussing that, Syracuse gets a Quadrant 1 win and a badly needed one. Now, the trick is some consistency. You can't slip against Wake Forest at home on Sunday. Syracuse lost to Wake Forest by 6 earlier this year. That's a game they had to have in terms of they should have won that game. And I know that you slip a little bit on the ACC in the road, and sometimes a possession or two doesn't go your way. But the Orange fully took advantage of it tonight because, that crowd was dead for the most part. Louisville kept pace with Syracuse and shooting the ball in some other areas, but it never really felt like Louisville was, going to get back in this game or was control of this game until the last few minutes when things got a little bit nail-biting there. Syracuse had a 12-point lead. That whittled down. Cardinals went on an 8-0 run, and then it became anybody's game. But first time we've really seen Syracuse this year respond on every possession. And, you go back to the first half. So Syracuse had a great first half against Boston College, right? They scored 47 points in that half. Let me pull up the stat while we're talking about it here. Syracuse goes into halftime. Their points off turnovers there was 16-0. They had a 39-33 lead. Now, Louisville, as teams always tend to do against Syracuse, this is just a weird thing, but everybody seems to get that last three-pointer in on the Orange at the end of the first half. But despite that, Syracuse goes into that half with 39 points. They shot 49% in that first half. So the stat with Boston College is this. The Orange scored 47 points in the first half against BC. Offensive explosion that night, right? So this was the first time in the past 8 games that Syracuse scored more than 28 points in the first half. 8 straight games under 28 points after getting 47 in the first half against Boston College. It just goes to show you how inconsistent Syracuse has been on the offensive end this year, or really consistent if you talk about how bad they've been, but haven't been able to break through that, and did tonight. And just it was refreshing to see a good basketball game, and Syracuse maintained tonight. Syracuse responded. They maintained. They had a lead. Yeah, they lost a 12-point lead, but really came through on the road, which was big, and got a lot of help from that Louisville crowd, frankly, because that Louisville crowd was awful. It was one of the quietest and worst Louisville crowds that I have seen. So let's see a little bit of what you guys are saying here in the comment section. Make sure you leave your comments and, tell me what you think here and some things that you'll be looking for going forward and how you think this team can do on the offensive end going forward. Mark says that problem with Frank is assists. That can go up and down. We'll hop in the box score and look at it tonight. And I think at some point it's worth noting, but you can't always use this as an excuse. Frank, who had just 1 assist tonight. Yeah, so you'd like to see that get better. He wasn't a point guard in high school and has kind of taken on the role. And, Tyus Battle did handle the ball in a few possessions late in the game, but for a guy who was not a point guard in high school and it kind of took on the position here and has been learning as he goes, it goes back and forth. Like we said, Frank giveth, Frank tanketh away kind of thing. He can work the ball a little bit. He holds on to it a little bit too much sometimes. So, and that's where your offense flows through, your point guard, right? So, what you're counting on Frank to do is score. And when he hasn't scored in the last few games, you're like, well, what are we doing here, right? Tonight, he broke through and got back in the flow, hit some open shots, started to set up his teammates a little bit. Only had 1 assist, as we said. But some of the turnovers that you see aren't always his fault. I think he gets the ball where it needs to be. And, we've seen Merrick drop the ball and Pascal drop the ball at times, but not tonight. Syracuse, and it was a real team effort. Everybody that got in there, Matthew Moyer didn't have the best game. Matthew Moyer always plays hard. Just looking at his box score, he had 2 points tonight. He did just had 1 rebound, only played 13 minutes. Matt's problem tonight was foul trouble. That's something we haven't even mentioned. I knew there was something else that wanted to mention that we didn't get to at this point. Foul trouble. O'Shea Brissett fouled out. Matthew Moyer with 3 fouls. Pascal Chukwu with 4 fouls. Merrick Dolezaj played most of the game, right around that 3 foul mark, and was trying to be careful not to get to the point where he fouled out. Frank Howard, we brought up, had 2 really dumb fouls in 3-point shooters. See what we mean about Frank and how it goes back and forth. The only guy that really wasn't in foul trouble tonight was Tyus Battle. You go through it. Everybody that got significant minutes in this game, with the exception of Tyus Battle, had 3 fouls or more. Yet the only guy who fouled out of this game was O'Shea Brissett, which is good that Syracuse was able to take care of business in regulation. You go to overtime, you start losing some guys, and, good night, Irene. That would have been tougher for Syracuse to pull off. Roland says, beat Wake, NC State at home, then beat Carolina or Clemson at home, add a win over Miami or Duke on the road, and we'll be in good shape. I think Syracuse needs 3 big wins, 3 signature wins to stay on Joe Lunardi's resume, and then you always get the bailout of the ACC tournament if you can win 2 games there, depending on who those 2 wins, of course, are. But you can't – I think the bigger thing is you can't slip. You can't lose games like Wake Forest that you're supposed to win. You got Wake and NC State back-to-back at home, first on Sunday, then on Valentine's Day against NC State. So, you got to cash in those games. Yes, those are both home games. Then you go to Miami, North Carolina at home. So 3 of Syracuse's next 4 games are at home. And North Carolina, not quite as intimidating a team as I think they were maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. They've lost some games. They've looked vulnerable. They could score. But if you get in a game where you can get in a free-flowing offensive game, maybe Syracuse is showing a little bit tonight that they can score a little bit, that they can shoot the ball a little bit better. Duke's going to be tough. Duke's Duke. I know they lost to St. John's this weekend, but I think that'll kind of wake the sleeping bear a little bit. Problem with Duke, they can't defend anybody. I don't think I've seen a Final Four contender, a really good team, and there's 5 NBA players in that starting lineup, and they can score, I think, at 80 just by showing up. But they're really bad on defense. So if Syracuse can get in the flow at Cameron Indoor Stadium, not an easy thing to do, and can gain some consistency on the offensive end, you got that opportunity. Then you finish the season at BC and Clemson. But in your immediate horizon here, Wake, NC State, at Miami, North Carolina, and 3 of those 4 at home. So you take care of business at home. You pick up another signature win against North Carolina potentially. Now we're talking here. Now you're in business. But they've got to build some consistency. That's the problem, right? That is the problem with this team, finding some consistency going down the road here. What else are we saying here in the comments? Big road win, Michelle says, as it certainly was. Dan mentioning that losing to Wake and Notre Dame at the start of the season could come back to haunt them. Yeah, not the best thing for the Orange. That Notre Dame loss really hurt. It was a 2-point loss at home. They didn't have Bonzie Colson. They didn't have Matt Farrell. And see, that's the thing with Syracuse. They're never out of a game. Virginia's an exception, and there's 1 or 2 exceptions on the schedule, but they are in every game they play. It's always kind of a 4 to 6 point game, but if you're not hitting shots and your offense isn't flowing, even at its most basic level, then you're trying to come back. Tonight, Syracuse got the points off turnovers, maintained the lead throughout, kept holding off Louisville, kept, making stops, and Louisville, would make some mistakes. And what I was questioning with Louisville at the end? They're going inside, and they're just killing Syracuse in the paint. And then all of a sudden they start jacking up 3-pointers. They had a couple really bad possessions late in the game. You'll take it if you're a Syracuse fan, right? But it was interesting to see how that played out. So all told, this is a big win for Syracuse, and they get about 6 days here to work on Wake Forest and get ready for it. And it's funny how it goes, because when you start losing, people start saying, well, make adjustments and figure things out and open it up. I didn't really see anything that different tonight, did you? You guys can tell me if you saw some different sets. There is one thing we should note that was different, okay? Running the same type of plays. But this was a great observation. Shout out to our guy, Jason Murray, our sports manager here at syracuse.com, who tweeted this. Let me pull it up because he made a great point on this. Syracuse was doing the same thing, but it was a subtle change. Maybe you guys noticed this. On offense, they let O'Shea Brissett and Merrick Dolezaj kind of set that high ball screen instead of Pascal Chukwu. And that really opened up ball movement. That really opened things up on the offensive end. That's something that Pascal struggled with. Again, he played a lot better tonight than he has been as of late. But that subtle change, same play, same set, that's kind of their bread and butter, if you will. But letting those 2 set more of the screens really opened things up on the offensive end. That was a great point by Jason, and that really helped Syracuse out here. So there's an adjustment, and we'll see, every matchup's different, every team's different, but it's certainly something they can do against Wake Forest. It's certainly something they can do against NC State as well. So, look, it's no secret with Syracuse. Ty's battle and Frank Howard have to score. O'Shea's got to compliment them and hit some shots. What they put out there tonight against a good team. This is kind of the model going forward of what they have to do. You need Tyus and Frank. You don't have to have 25 and 22 every night, but they got to score, and they have to be confident. O'Shea's got to compliment those guys, take some pressure off them, hit some shots. Merrick Dolezaj inside, couple of shots a game. He hit a great tip in at the end. Some hustle plays, defense. Pascal getting rebounds and tip-ins. Matthew Moyer contributing where he can. If Barham is healthy, that's only going to help things. He didn't play tonight. They're really kind of being careful with that knee tendonitis. And with 6 days off, you would anticipate he's going to get back in the flow of things against Wake Forest coming up on Sunday. So, I mean, that's the model. It's not going to be easy. And Jim Boeheim, I saw kind of, secondhand here, keeping an eye on a few other things. But people always bring up depth with Jim. And agree or disagree, what he'll tell you is, college basketball these days are like 3-4 minute increments, and then there's a timeout. There's enough breaks in the action. There's enough, the refs were certainly busy tonight, and free throws, because hashtag free throws matter, right? Tonight, Louisville is 20 of 26 at 76%. Syracuse was 22 of 29, 75%. Syracuse out-rebounded Louisville by 1. Syracuse hit one more three-pointer in this game than Louisville. The Orange 6 of 13. Louisville not very good from the three-point range overall. 5 of 21, 23%. Syracuse was 46%. But it was quality shots. They weren't forcing bad shots. So you look at this statistically. Defensive rebounds were even. Offensive rebounds were even. Points in the paint. Louisville just had a 4-point edge. You look at this game on the whole, and things look pretty even, right? But it was Syracuse just squeezing out those extra possessions and the tip in at the end, and I think Louisville making some questionable decisions, and you walk away with a close win. It's just that simple sometimes. All right, so what do you say we get back together and do this again on Sunday? The Orange and Wake Forest, 3 out of their next 4 at the Carrier Dome, starting with the Demon Deacons. Appreciate you hanging with us tonight. Check out all of our coverage on syracuse.com. I want to thank our friends at the Bill Rapp Superstore as well for sponsoring this Facebook Live and our Syracuse Sports Podcast. New episode of the Syracuse Sports Podcast coming out a little later this week. Hope you guys can subscribe to that on iTunes and Google Play. Get some fun stuff there. And now the Orange get a week to work on some things. And you get a week to enjoy the fact the Patriots lost the Super Bowl. Sorry, I had to do it. I'm a Bills fan. Fly, Eagles, fly, baby. What a win. What a Super Bowl. We got a nice treat, nice entertaining game on Sunday, and a nice entertaining game tonight on Monday night in a Syracuse basketball game. Go figure. It was nice to see it, and you guys, I'm sure, happy that the Orange got a win. So check out my recap on syracuse.com. Tomorrow, be up bright and early in the morning. Enjoy the rest of your evening, the rest of your week, and we'll chat again here on Facebook Live, right here on the syracuse.com, Syracuse Orange Basketball Facebook page, after the Wake Forest game on Sunday. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us.